A grand aristocratic wedding. A missing bride. Kidnapped? Or... This is the Retold Files. We condense classic masterpieces so you can still hear a great story in just a fleeting moment. How will Sherlock Holmes solve this mystery? The curious collapse of the marriage of Lord St. Simon has long since faded from fashionable memory. New scandals replaced it, louder and more convenient. Yet the true explanation was never made public, and since Sherlock Holmes played a decisive part in untangling it, no account of his career would be complete without this episode. The affair occurred a few weeks before my own marriage, at a time when Holmes and I were still sharing rooms in Baker Street. One wet autumn afternoon, Holmes returned from a walk to find a letter awaiting him on the table. I had been indoors all day, my old Afghan wound aching with the weather, newspapers piled around me. "A very aristocratic envelope," I remarked. "Yes," Holmes said lightly. "Such letters usually summon a man either to boredom or to falsehood." He read, then looked up with interest. Professional, and from one of the highest rank in England. The letter was from Lord Robert St. Simon. He wished to consult Holmes regarding a painful matter connected with his wedding. Lestrade was already involved, but Holmes's assistance was requested. Lord Robert St. Simon would call at 4. Holmes turned to me. "You have been reading the papers. You know the case?" "Of course, with great interest." "Then help me. Arrange the reports. I'll look up our client." Lord Robert St. Simon, 41, second son of the Duke of Balmoral. Old lineage, little money. Holmes shut the book. "Nothing there. Let us have the facts." The newspapers told the story quickly. A quiet marriage arranged between Lord St. Simon and Miss Hattie Doran, daughter of a wealthy American. A modest ceremony at St. George's, Hanover Square. A breakfast afterwards at Lancaster Gate. Then, nothing. The bride vanished during the wedding breakfast. A woman caused a disturbance at the house, claiming a connection to the bridegroom. The bride retired briefly, returned for no more than minutes, and was then seen leaving the house in a traveling cloak. Later, she was observed walking in Hyde Park with the same woman who had caused the disturbance. The police intervened. The bride was not found. Miss Flora Millar, former dancer, was arrested. That was all. At 4 o'clock precisely, Lord St. Simon arrived. He was well dressed, carefully composed, yet visibly strained. Holmes questioned him methodically. He had met Miss Doran in San Francisco. They became engaged later in London. She was spirited, independent, unused to restraint, but he believed her honorable. On the morning of the wedding she seemed cheerful until after the ceremony. Then a change. She dropped her bouquet. A man in a pew returned it. She appeared shaken. In the carriage afterwards, strangely agitated. Later she spoke briefly with her maid, used an American expression, jumping a claim. She left the breakfast room and never returned. Lord St. Simon admitted that Flora Millar had once been close to him. He insisted she meant no harm. Holmes listened. Then he said calmly, "I have solved the case." Lord St. Simon stared. "I shall inform you of the details shortly." The nobleman departed, unconvinced. When the door closed, Holmes smiled faintly. "Circumstantial evidence can be most convincing, Watson, when one knows how to read it." At that moment, Lestrade arrived. He had been dragging the Serpentine, in search of Lady St. Simon's body. Holmes laughed outright. Lestrade produced the bride's wedding clothes, recovered from the water, and a note signed with Flora Millar's initials. Holmes examined the reverse side of the paper. "A hotel bill," he murmured. "Extremely interesting." Lestrade scoffed and left in irritation. Before going, Holmes called after him, Lady St. Simon does not exist. There never has been such a person. That evening, a lavish supper arrived unannounced. Holmes expected company. At 9, Lord St. Simon returned, agitated, offended, demanding answers. Holmes opened the door again. "Allow me to introduce Mr. and Mrs. Francis Hay Moulton." The bride stepped forward. Her story was simple. Years before, in a mining camp, she had married Frank Moulton in secret. They separated so he could make his fortune. News came that he was dead. She mourned him, believed it. Then came London, engagement, wedding, and at the altar she saw him alive. A note, a sign, a decision made in an instant. She followed him. The wedding clothes were discarded to erase pursuit. Holmes had found them through the hotel bill. Lord St. Simon listened in silence. When it ended, he offered forgiveness but no warmth. He declined supper and left. Later, Holmes explained. The reasoning was straightforward. A willing bride, a sudden reversal, a man seen at the church, American slang, a confidential maid, claim jumping, a prior right. The rest was deduction. He took up his violin. And now, Watson, the only mystery left is how to pass the evening. You've been listening to The Retold Files. Until next time,